Welcome to Better Humanhood, where we build a better world by building better people. We have to live on the planet, and we have to live with other people. We have conversations about making that a wonderful proposition.
Hey there, welcome back to Better Humanhood. I hope you enjoyed our series on empathy, at least found it instructive. Today we started a shorter 3-part series on happiness. Unlike the last series, this time you'll find that the last episode of the series is going to be the longest. Just like with empathy, we are going to start with what happiness looks like in the brain, what it means. What is happiness? Merriam-Webster defines happiness as a state of well-being and contentment, or a pleasurable or satisfying experience. Well, that doesn't really get down to specifics, does it? Let's look at the origin of the word. It turns out it's not much better. The 1520s dates back to good fortune from happy plus ness, meaning pleasant and contented mental state, coming from the 1590s. The etymology of happy gets a little more down to it. Coming from the late 14th century, so dates back almost 700 years to the 1300s. Lucky, favored by fortune, being in advantageous circumstances, prosperous of events, turning out well, comes from a noun hap, chance or fortune, plus a suffix y, sense of very glad, first recorded in the late 14th century. So it moves into the 1520s, more than a century after that, meaning greatly pleased and content. So specifically, happiness is the feeling of pleasure you get when you're lucky. That doesn't really show us the pathway that in the brain that we learned about with empathy, but there are happiness chemicals. We know that. Writing in Psychology Today, Christopher Berglund identifies 7 of them. First is endocannabinoids. She writes are self-produced cannabis that work on the CB1 and CB2 receptors of the cannabinoid system. Anandamide, from the Sanskrit ananda, meaning bliss, is the most well-known endocannabinoid. Basically, we have a bunch of different receptors in our brains meant to receive different chemicals from cannabis, about 85 of them, actually. We make some of those ourselves. Endocannabinoids are probably responsible for runner's high, so I guess that feeling is accurately named. If you haven't felt runner's high, keep running. I usually hit it about an hour, 20 hour, 30 minutes into my run. Suppose if I tried running faster, maybe I'd hit it a little earlier, because we know that it starts to hit when you're depleted, but not dehydrated, if you know kind of where that sits. Second happiness chemical is dopamine. It's our reward system. Drugs like cocaine and methamphetamine hit our dopamine systems. It's also the thing that keeps us checking Facebook and Instagram for likes. Just one more hit. That little just tinge of happiness. I don't know if you noticed that they did this with the apps, but if you open Facebook or Instagram and you have the app, it'll wait just a quick moment before it shows you what you have for notifications. When you load it, it'll go, you'll see the red dot, and then it'll go away, and then it'll come back with a number in it. It's just to grab you a little bit more. Oxytocin is another of the happiness chemicals. It's our romantic bonding hormone. Skin-to-skin contact, cuddling, other forms of intimacy will increase oxytocin, although this may affect men and women differently. Women get oxytocin more from this contact, and it seems that vasopressin might serve this purpose in men. We can also increase oxytocin by doing things like drinking coffee, eating chocolate. If you listen to James Altucher at all, he talks a lot about how to, at least his early podcasts, he would talk about getting a little happier by eating chocolate. And actually, he talked about, after the crash of 2008, about actually handing out chocolates to traders and getting them a little bit happier and a little more aggressive on the floor, getting volume back up and getting the market back going. Endorphin is another these chemicals, the name endorphin translates into self-produced morphine. Berglund writes, endorphins resemble opiates in their chemical structure and have analgesic properties. Endorphins are produced in the pituitary gland and the hypothalamus during strenuous physical exertion, sexual intercourse, and orgasm. So while runner's high is handled by our endocannabinoids, pushing through an intense workout or lifting very heavy weights hits the same chemicals as orgasm does. GABA is your chill happy molecule. Yoga and meditation increase GABA, and benzodiazepines like Valium, Xanax, that kind of thing, work as anti-anxiety drugs and sedatives thanks to GABA. Serotonin plays so many different roles in our bodies that it is really tough to tag it, Berglund writes. He calls it the confidence molecule. Many antidepressants are selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, or SSRIs, things like sertraline, which is Zoloft. These increase levels of serotonin in the brain, but you can increase it without drugs by doing confidence-boosting things like challenging yourself and doing things that give you a sense of purpose. And we're going to talk about this later, but goals are less... You get less happy when you achieve the goal as you do about hitting things along the way, and there's your serotonin hit as you hit those milestones. It's that little confidence boost. The last thing, the last chemical Berglund writes about is adrenaline, or epinephrine. It's your overdrive molecule. A surge of adrenaline makes you feel very alive, he writes. It can be an antidote for boredom, malaise, and stagnation. Taking risks, doing scary things that force you out of your comfort zone is key to maximizing your human potential. However, people often act recklessly to get an adrenaline rush. You think about everybody who's ever died in one of the squirrel suits, the little flying squirrel suits. I can tell you from getting a shot from an EpiPen once that's artificial adrenaline, basically, that it is so overdrive. I passed out in just a few seconds. I had been bitten by fire ants and went into anaphylactic response. Everything swelled up, and they hit me with that EpiPen, and I was out. I thought I'd taken a nice 20-minute nap. It turned out it was only out for a few seconds, and my body was in hives all over. They had to give me a corticosteroid to bring it back down. And I sat on the couch for the rest of the day, and I probably took in 3,000 calories, just trying to replenish what essentially the adrenaline took while I was sitting on that urgent care bed. We went over to Sonic and got a couple of milkshakes, and that was really how it went. Not a good weight loss plan. I want to tell you to skip that. Skip stabbing yourself with an EpiPen as a diet plan. It's just, it's really not where you want to be. And that's how that goes. And Stumbling on Happiness, Dan Gilbert, I'm sorry. I don't know where I got Chris. Daniel Gilbert wrote Stumbling on Happiness. This is cocaine, kittens, and curing cancer may seem different, but they each generate a roughly similar pattern of neural activity. So it seems that in some form these all lead to happiness. Cocaine, kittens, and curing cancer. Gilbert relates 3 distinct types of happiness: emotional, moral, and judgmental. And this brings us back to the same issue we had when we were looking at definitions and word origins. It's hard to pin down exactly what each means. In fact, unlike empathy, there isn't an objective outward manifestation of happiness. We can see it in the brain with the release of certain chemicals, as we noted above, but what makes you happy might not be what makes me happy, and vice versa. I may enjoy my runner's high. You might think I'm crazy for even seeking it out with a 3-hour run. Meanwhile, you might love spending hours listening to mumble rap on SoundCloud, and I just don't get it. If asked to define emotional happiness, Gilbert writes, we would either point to the objects of the world that tend to bring it about, or we would mention other feelings that it is like. In fact, it's the only thing we can do when we're asked to define a subjective experience. We can't actually define what the thing is. There's no objective definition. Gilbert goes on to write that some people would say that subjective studies are irreducible, which is to say that nothing we point to, nothing we can compare them with, and nothing we can say about the neurological underpinnings can fully substitute for experiments themselves. Unlike empathy, then, we can't systematize happiness. You might remember that we talked about people with high-functioning autism systematizing happiness or empathy, rather, and what would be required for self-driving cars, that kind of thing. We can't do it for happiness. We can do it for empathy, not for happiness. It makes happiness a lot more work than empathy. There's no truly objective outward measure. Some people cry when they're happy and appear to smile when they're constipated, for example, and nothing is guaranteed to make everybody happy. You think you have a thing or two in mind, but as you'll find out in future installments, you are wrong. Not everybody loves puppies, turns out, or kittens, or cocaine, or curing cancer, I guess. Maybe it just doesn't make everybody happy. Kevin and I talked about this on JKWD recently, but we are all interested in control. Human beings come into the world with a passion for control, Gilbert writes, and they go out of the world in the same way. Research suggests that if they lose their ability to control things at any point between their entrance and their exit, they become unhappy, helpless, hopeless, and depressed. Let me read that again. Human beings come into the world with a passion for control. They go out of the world the same way. Research suggests that if they lose their ability to control things at any point between their entrance and their exit, they become unhappy, helpless, hopeless, and depressed. You hear in communities about letting go. It's really not the case. What we do is we train our bodies and our brains to be in more control. That's what makes us happy. Meditation isn't about letting go of all your thoughts. It's about controlling your mind, about not reacting. It's about being in such control that nothing can take away your happiness. Next time, we are going to talk about when is happiness. So you think you're happy now? Maybe. But until then, I hope you have a lovely day, lovely week. Be who you are, be who you will to be, and we will catch you next time.
Thank you for listening. Get show notes and more at betterhumanhood.com. Leave us a rating and review wherever you listen to podcasts. And have yourself a wonderful day.